All right, good evening. Good evening. We have arrived to one of my favorite weeks on the ship chasing calendar, and that is, of course, Playoff Challenge Week. We have been doing this for years. Pat would go into the ownership lab, and it has evolved since those humble beginnings into a monstrosity of a programming week. And of course, now the kickoff event is the Boomer Opto reveal, and tonight Hasan from RotoViz will be joining us to give his proprietary blended Boomer optimal lineup, and then Pat will check it against his ownership projections, and we will be off to the races here on Ship Chasing in advance of the playoffs. Let's do it.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Hanjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally piss boys. You're right.
All right. We got Pat Kerrane. We got Hasan. Gretch is traveling back from watching his Huskies last night. And Blair, I believe, is dealing with power outages. You know, we're all fighting through it tonight. Pat and Hasan, how are you guys doing?
Doing good. Yeah, I talked to my parents just before this, and they also don't have power. They're in Delaware. Blair's in Maryland, right? So it's like a big area affected by a giant storm, apparently.
How about Hasan? How is your internet holding up? I got a message from the power company that mine could be in jeopardy here as well. So we shall see.
Mine should be good, but just want to say Happy New Year, y'all. We spent a lot of time at the Sizzler and at the Cracker Barrel and just at the Ponderosa Steakhouses, just really grinding that beat, man.
We did.
Yeah. We got a bunch of people chilling at the Sizzler tonight. We are packed, so might be a delay in service. Everyone just be patient. Hasan, you know, it's a wonderful time of year because you and Blair, you're firing over on the podcast feed. We got a bunch of content coming. You know, it takes the playoffs to really get you guys going. Well, at least you. I mean, Blair's been grinding articles all season, but this is your Super Bowl week, Hasan.
This is it, man. Like, what was it, like 6 years ago where we declared war on Australia and also coined the term Boomer Opto? So
Please tell me that wasn't 6 years ago. I would have guessed like 3 at most.
Dude, no, do you want to know how I know it's more than 3? Because I just realized I was doing the club earlier with Jack, and it was a 3-year anniversary of when I did my first Top Shot show with Jack. 3 years. So it's definitely been like 6 years since the Boomer Opto.
Oh, no.
So we've refined this thing, though. You know, like we've taken it through many iterations. I think adding in the Ponderosa has really sharpened the algo, though. You know.
And the other thing is, Hasan, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's now competition in the Boomer Opto streets. Not only are there people in the Discord kind of spitballing ideas, but FantasyMojo tried to beat you to market with his own. He was calling it like the
Sizzler
Opto,
chalk. Yeah, we know what you're doing.
But he's biting the Boomer Opto. He is trying to get ahead of market on the Boomer Opto. Do you have any thoughts for Mr. FantasyMojo?
You know, it is a proprietary model, and like Mojo, you need to suffer a lot of brain damage and a lot of gut health damage before you're out here really putting in the hours. All right.
Are you saying he's not enough of a boomer to do the Boomer Opto?
No, he needs to post a picture of himself drinking from the chocolate fountain at Sizzler, and then we're going to consider his membership.
Yeah, Hasan, maybe let people know, what do you think makes you particularly qualified to kind of get inside the mind of a Boomer fantasy player?
Genuinely, probably just the brain damage. I'll be honest, guys.
What happened to you, Hasan?
It's just, I don't know, man. Like you go to the Cracker Barrel one time, right? And then from there you get like their chicken fried steak. And that's it. Like your brain sort of regresses to this like primal state, and it just will never return. It's just gone.
Well, we are very happy for all of the research you do to make sure.
Thanks for putting your gifts to good use here, son.
Well,
I would say this is the first year, we didn't get to touch base with you guys since the regular season ended. We had a really good team. The three of us, Gretch and Blair, the Five Horsemen, it won its league title impressively, although we kind of fizzled out there in the sprint run, Hasan.
Yeah, we just as a heads up, we finished well out of the cash, but we also finished like 400 plus bases from where we started, which and if you think about it a little bit, like that's pretty good. It's unfortunate. I mean, the thesis behind that team was the Jets and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and Bijan just not having the spike weeks that we needed, despite like solid playoff schedules. It just didn't come together for us. Because we really could have cashed that team.
I was listening to the Roto World Fantasy Football podcast, and they were laughing because apparently at the end of the year, like some reporters were talking to Garrett Wilson. They're like, I mean, you had a really good year. He's like, I had a good year. This was the worst year of my life.
That's like when we tell Hasan that our team is doing good, like during the week. And he's like, we're like, Hasan, it's a good team. He's like, this is the worst team of my life.
Yeah.
It won. Finished first.
I know. Hey, we ripped off nine straight wins too. Like just an improbable run out there.
Yeah, well, we got it done, and because of that, I think we're really well equipped to run hot here into the playoffs. How else was the rest of your year? How's dad life? You're always traveling. You're a man about town. You're a studious man. Are you still in school? Give the people the little cliff notes on what you've been up to.
Now, we graduated about a year and a half, started a new pretty demanding job, which is nice. It's definitely taken away from the fantasy stuff, unfortunately, trying to figure out how to get back into it. Outside of that, the dad life stuff is fun. It's really, as you can probably tell, like it's just exciting watching them grow into like little people, especially when they get like little personalities of their own and they'll start interacting with you. Now we have like a tradition on Sundays where I'll get like a second TV and we'll have two TVs going and I'm watching Red Zone and she's watching Bluey and she's
that's the dream, man.
It's the way to go. It just gets it's just exciting. I mean, look my pod co-host, he's done it 3 times, man.
He's had sex 3 times?
Yeah, exactly. 3 exact times.
Mr. Sex Haver himself, Blair Andrews, welcome to the show. You got some internet?
I have internet for now. We'll see if it holds up.
Beautiful. Well, we're happy to have you.
To correct the record, you're saying you've had sex 4 times, Blair?
Well, actually, one of my kids is adopted, so I can only guarantee 3. But I have 4 kids.
Him back. Okay, so I was right. Sex 3 times.
Exactly.
4 kids. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're correct.
How did I not? How did that's the first time I'm finding out about this?
You didn't know that?
No.
I'm a very private person, as you know.
These guys have been potting for like a decade, and Hasan just like, you have a 4th kid?
Yeah, I have 4 kids, but only sex 3 times.
The Boomer Opto.
You're an extremely private person.
Blair, other than all of the copious amounts of sex that have led you here, how are things going for you? Are you feeling ready for playoff week?
I am ready for playoff week. I'm feeling good. Hasan and I got one team together on our stream on Sunday, and it already looks like we made some very bad decisions since it was during the Buffalo-Miami game, but you got to start with the bad decisions, and then by the end of the week, you're making good teams.
Wait, was it an underdog team that's fixed, or are you just a shell for FFPC Playoff Challenge? You know you can edit it, right?
You can edit
it's a shell here. Yeah.
It's just a shell.
You don't have to stick with that one?
No.
We had so much conviction picking those players too.
No, I'm going to take that back. The reason you do have to stick with it, it's the same way whenever I build like a DraftKings lineup on stream, you have to put that in some contest because then you'd have everyone coming back to you, dude, what did you put that in? That fucking smash, 250 points. And if you didn't have it in something, you can't live with that guilt.
That's true. That's true. Can't change it now.
Shout out to everyone in the chat here. Kev drumming up some likes for us. My guy Sean sending a super chat. Beat the cash game king this week, so only right that I give some back. Congratulations, Sean.
Shout out to your appearance on the Gilcast, by the way. That was the most entertaining podcast I've listened to since the season started. It was unbelievably funny. Just delightful. And you had a pretty good week, right?
Yes, it was a good week. So lots of dupage, but as I told everyone, if you don't show up with the same lineup as me, you played bad. Even Sean saying he beat me means he played a lineup that projected worse than mine and sucked out because I played the highest projected lineup on ETR. So if you beat me, you played suboptimally. And if you lost, you played suboptimally. It's only if you dupe me that you played optimally.
But isn't that the point of the same lineup, right? He didn't.
No. I was texting with Levitan how hilarious it was that I ran the ETR optimal, which happened to be a double stack on cash game week, while he IKB'd a 3v3 off of his own site's optimal.
That's so good.
It's so good. Blair, what else are you firing at everything? Are you doing some underdog drafts? Are you doing FFPC? Going to be in the mix everywhere?
Yeah, we got some teams going everywhere. Got some gauntlet drafts we've done on stream. We've done some FFPC. Yeah, it's good. I understand there's NFFC playoff contests you can play in, but I'm not familiar with that sort of thing. So
it's a much more, there's like more strategy to the game itself. I've never really dove into it. It's a pretty interesting one.
Yeah.
The FFPC contest is like, it's the simplicity that I actually gravitate to because no one really needs any explanation on the rules. You get it immediately, but that's the beauty of it because then everyone plays it exactly the same. You just have it's just the ultimate game theory game.
Right. Now there is something fun about how removing a lot of the weird rules that make it complicated actually make the game theory aspect a lot more complex and thoughtful.
Exactly.
And I will say there is an element, like, I think we're all like we're going hard. And then we all put a ton of effort into drafting teams this week. You know, Underdog has a ton of contests. We devote a ton of brain power to this. And there's something nice about being like, all right, now I'm just going to kind of like chill through the playoffs, let my action ride. Whereas then you fire that up and you're like, God, shit, I got to think about, optionality and leverage and all of these things. But that's a good segue into our programming schedule for this week. I mentioned a little bit last week, but just so you know, 4 shows this week, all at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. Of course, we have the Boomer Opto reveal tonight. Tomorrow night, we'll get Gretch back in the saddle. We're going to reveal Pat's first batch of ownership projections for the FFPC playoff contest. Thursday is going to be a stat chasing crossover show, bit of a hodgepodge. We're going to try to cover a lot of ground. We'll hit on updated FFPC playoff contest thoughts. We will check in on some underdog stuff. Obviously, Sacrilegious has been deep into the lab doing some stuff over with Legendary Upside. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we will dive into the NFC challenge a bit. We were kind of batting around some ideas in our group chat today. So we're going to cover a lot of ground on Thursday. And then, of course, Friday, Leone and Dink, the final drunken blitz through show, trying to figure out our final thoughts for the FFPC playoff contest. So all here on Ship Chasing. Make sure you're subscribed 8:15 p.m. Eastern every single night. But Hasan, I think without further ado, I think we should start this unveiling. What do you think?
Yeah, let's get it going.
All right. I searched in my Google Drive, Boomer Opto, and lo and behold, I have a beautiful sheet that already existed.
Look at that.
I could show you the ones this was from a couple years ago. We had a Josh Allen. Oh, this is from last year. Allen. I was going to say, love you, Pat. Austin Eckler. That's the only one. CMC, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown. Can you read this, Grandma? Travis Kelce. People forget. Man, I'm going to ruin all my jokes. I could have just reused these. People forget FFPC is tight end premium. Chris Godwin, Saquon Barkley, Ja'Marr Chase, Ceedee Lamb, Justin Tucker. There you go. Ave Maria, Blair, and Jags D. That was last year's, but now
we are pretty dead on, if I recall.
It was very dead on.
Yeah. So Hasan, why don't you can go in whatever direction you'd like, although I think starting with what you think is just going to be the stone cold lock, the boomerest of boomery picks definitely makes sense.
Yeah, no, this is like the easiest one, man. It's going to be Christian McCaffrey, right? Like there's just, like there's just no other way to put it. Like, he's like the most attractive running back in this entire contest. He just does it all. It also just so happens that like when you start really trying to figure out if there's any viable pivots, yeah, the Niners have a handful, but like realistically, people aren't going to want to pass on a potential, 21 point per game floor and possibly also 35-point ceiling, right? It just really is like, this is just pretty much it. Like, this is how people are going to start. I mean, like, it was right there in the thumbnail, right? Like this is how people want to start their builds with Christian McCaffrey at the running back slot. Like, there's just no way they're not gonna. I mean, you already saw people talking about how CMC was a 1-on-1. Why not just get him where you don't have to pay anything for him this year, right?
Yeah, and it's doing like the ownership projections on this stuff. I really try to think through the 2v2s and kind of what people are going to be feeling in their gut when they move, because it's easy to go, whatever, I just won't play McCaffrey. I'll play Deebo Samuel. Well, this is a pretty weak running back field. And so the 2v2 then becomes like Devin Achane and Deebo Samuel versus CMC and Tyreek Hill. Just like, that is not something people are going to feel comfy about. And you can do things like play Rashad White instead of Mike Evans, but then you're worried about, am I going to lose one of my running backs? Am I going to just get beat at running back really badly once the Bucs lose because everyone's going to have CMC and I don't? So I just completely agree. I think it's going to be really difficult for people to get off CMC, even though there are strong pivots on the 49ers.
Yeah, and the reason too, and like we'll get into it deeper into the week, right? Where if you wanted to play a Niners upset, you can start to entertain some other things. But when you look at the Super Bowl odds, when you look at how people are going to want to play this, they're going to want to play this as the Niners winning multiple games. The second you go down that logic tree, it's really, really hard to envision anyone outscoring him over multiple games. Blair, do you have any holes to poke in the CMC Boomer lock button?
I really don't. I think he's just the most obvious play. Not only, especially like you said, at the running back position, there's nobody else who comes close to giving you what he does at that position. So
you failed.
I will say,
I was just going to say Blair failed because he had a chance to just entrench himself on the biggest Jahmyr Gibbs bowl in the industry. You were ahead of market all off season. You could have just really doubled down here and said Gibbs should be the guy there.
The problem is I want to actually play Gibbs in this contest. So
I think we'll have that opportunity.
We will.
We will. I've done so. By the way, my initial round of ownership projections, we're gonna reveal tomorrow, as you mentioned, Pete. If you're a ship chasing member, you'll get those. If you're a legendary upside subscriber, you'll also get those. So support the show, and you'll get the ownership projections when we release them tomorrow. As I was doing them though, McCaffrey was not the highest owned guy that I had projected. So curious about your guys' thought. Do you guys think he will be the chalkiest player in the field?
Well, why don't we go to Hasan? I believe Hasan's about to tee up who you think is going to be the chalkiest player in the field, or at least close to.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much like a strong, like a 1B to like CMC 1A in my opinion. But it's like Ceedee Lamb, right? Like there's just no way, especially following his playoff eruption, that you just don't want to play him. And like there's no real solid way of playing the Cowboys, the skill players specifically, that isn't Ceedee Lamb, right? Like
imagine the 2v2 of Pollard, Deebo versus CMC Ceedee Lamb.
I don't even want to imagine that.
Yeah, or if you start thinking about Dak at quarterback, then like it just reverberates through the entire, like how do you go through it as you go through the entire like lineup, right?
Yeah. And that is the thing. Even though CMC is such a dominant pick, he still doesn't separate from his teammates in the way Ceedee Lamb does. And I've been liking using the underdog ADP, obviously a different contest, different format, but Deebo and Ayuk are both first round picks in that format, or Ayuk sometimes falls to the early second. You look at where Pollard goes, it's many picks after Ceedee Lamb. Like, he is distanced from the next best player on his team in such a way that I do agree with you guys that he could even surpass CMC here.
Yeah, I was talking to Jacob Sanderson early in the week just about the contest. We were kind of chatting, and he was like, how is Ceedee Lamb not 90% owned? And I was like, I hadn't really dug in yet fully, and that's exactly where I have him. I have him at 90%. I think he's going to be the kind of chalk we really rarely see, but it's like no one really wants to fade Dallas to the 2 seed. And I think people are going to want to fade their opponent. So you're not going to want to fade both sides of the game. That kind of reinforces the already not wanting to fade them because of the 2 seed. You don't really want to play anyone else. You don't feel great about playing Dak. So yeah, and it's one of those things where like not playing CD is not going to be fun. Like there in a lot of these spots, it's like, man, God, the field's so overconfident. It's like, yeah, they're probably a little overconfident. Like he should probably be like 80% owned. It's not going to be fun.
The thing too that kind of warps your brain with this contest is even if you want to play the Cowboys as getting upset, like just stone cold getting upset by the Packers, like if CD still drops 30, like he's going to be in the optimal lineup, even in one game, the way this contest works and how the other teams that lose are probably not going to have a scorer who separates from him in that way. And so like, even in those scenarios, we're like, all right, I'll hard fade a Cowboys one and done. It's like CD could still bury you and keep you from the optimal.
Yep.
Blair, any thoughts on Ceedee Lamb here?
No, I think that's right. It's really hard to get away from him. Like in all scenarios where you project Dallas to make a run, it's hard to see how CD is not the guy you want. And like you said, even if they lose, it's hard to see how he's not the guy you want. So I think pretty much everybody is going to be thinking that way. And yeah, this is one where yeah, it even feels bad, like you said, to go a little bit off the board with the Cowboys because nobody else is very attractive.
And I do think like it's hard not to get ahead of ourselves, but like, I do think you could, in some loss scenarios, maybe try a Ferguson, maybe a Brandon Cooks who's running really hot right now. But even like Pollard, man, it's like that guy can barely get there in super positive game scripts. Like, how are we expecting him to get there in a loss scenario? Like, they're going to be chucking it in any situations where they're in a trailing game script. So, man, if you have the stones to get to Pollard, man, it'll be really fascinating, Pat, to see how much Pollard we end up with across our portfolio. I
don't think I'm going to be pushing for Pollard because it's like
I don't know how we get to him.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting one because I do think there's going to be interesting pivot points, but I don't know that moving off of CD or CMC, like CMC also is a really, really strong play, even at a lot of ownership because of the reason that everyone wants to play him. I mean, he's the smash running back in a weak running back field on a team that's likely to make a deep run or, go and win the Super Bowl. So it's very difficult, but I think CD in some ways is harder than CMC because at least with CMC, you're like, if you go to Debo, you're live in 2 games to outscore CMC, maybe the calf strain, but I mean, you need the Cowboys to lose. I almost think you're better off taking like Jake Ferguson than Pollard and you just like play, he scores like 2 touchdowns and a loss.
Yeah. Well, that's even the thing with like the Debo, right? Like you can tell yourself that story, 1, because he's really good, and 2, because he'll get some of those goal line gimmicky TDs. Like if he steals the TDs from CMC, like they could be negatively correlated in a really beneficial way where it's like, I have no story to tell myself with Pollard like that.
Yeah. And with the wide receivers on the 49ers, like you could have a situation where CMC smashes in a win and then smashes in a win again. And you're like hurting but you go into the Super Bowl where it's double points and they lose to the Ravens again. and they have to throw a bunch. And with Ayuk or Debo, because there's double points in that round, you're at least live to catch up. Where with the Cowboys, like, you don't even feel as good about them making the Super Bowl. And so you're kind of like, you're one out is like, well, maybe he scores 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and those count double. If you're thinking about Pollard, but odds are he's never in the Super Bowl. And now you're just getting beat by Ceedee twice before they lose.
All right, Hasan, the Boomers are loading up in the NFC. Where are they headed to next as they head to the unlimited soft serve ice cream bar to get another cone?
Gonna stick around. Actually, I don't even know what division the Lions play in, but Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay.
I have really bad memory for like the divisions, but yeah, it's just gonna go. We're gonna go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. We discussed this a little bit on the repo, but I really think that again, Amon-Ra St. Brown is just such a strong play on Detroit. Like just from a chalk floor perspective that, people just want to get in their lineup, that I think that this is a team that has a lot of really interesting pivots. And I think why there's going to be a lot more ownership, like going ARSB's way, is because of that Sam LaPorta injury, and people are going to be a little bit nervous. Right.
For sure.
And you really can't see people like clicking Jahmyr Gibbs because David Montgomery seems to get a lot of those high leverage touches. And then, all roads lead back to ARSB, I think.
Yes. And ARSB has a little bit, not quite, but I remember last year talking through, was it last year when or was it 2 years ago when CMC was hurt? And it was like the Debo where you just felt comfy with him in any script, like losing or winning. Yeah. That's how you feel about Amon-Ra. And it's a bummer he went so nuclear in that last game, because if he didn't, say you got like the Gibbs or Montgomery game, and it's, I don't know, that recency bias looms large. And on top of that, like you go look at the Rams, and Pat, you tell me from your walkthrough stuff, same with you, Blair. I mean, they've been really good against the run too. I think everyone's just going to say, hey, I'm just going to play him on Raw. I don't need to overthink this or get fancy. Even if they lose, I'm very happy with what I'm going to get from him.
Yeah, I think one of the things too is that we kind of preach year in, year out, fill out a bracket, build a team that reflects that bracket. But we know the field doesn't do that in a real way. And often, you will see teams where you don't have a player picked on both sides of the game, or maybe you get a kicker and a fade, or a kicker versus a defense. And it's like, one of these teams is going to win. And you will now advance a kicker or defense or no one at all, depending on how you've played it. But the field would rather pick the shootouts in round one in a lot of cases. And this is that shootout, right? And so you get to pick Amon-Ra St. Brown here. And I don't need to figure out if they're trailing and Jahmyr Gibbs is in a good game script, or if they're winning and Dave Montgomery's punching it in. I just know that regardless of what happens, Amon-Ra is going to get there against this defense. And on the other side, I'm going to pick a Ram. I'm not fading this game. Lions defense, they're going to put up points. This is where there's going to be a ton of points. I'm getting Amon-Ra, and then I pick whichever Ram I want. And no matter what happens, I'm golden. I don't have to think about this anymore. It's super comfy.
Yep. Blair, you agree?
Yeah. So just looking at some of the numbers that I was, putting in my article, no team has faced more dropbacks than the Rams over the last 8 weeks. So yeah, they really do funnel teams to the air. And I think those are definitely the sort of stats you get people looking at who are paying attention to the matchups, which is going to make ARSB very popular. Looks like LaPorta has what they're calling an outside chance to play, but
I have him at like 0%. I just don't think people go there in this type of contest, especially with the Rams or with the Lions. No one feels good about the Lions winning, really.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't see any way that he isn't very popular there. It would have been very fun to have had LaPorta come off a big game people do forget FFPC's tight end premium. I think there's a chance if LaPorta had a big game and been healthy heading into here that he could have pulled, I don't know, 15, 20% away from him.
Even more, I think, because no one really wants to play Kelce, and you kind of have to now.
Right.
But I think LaPorta could have really rivaled Amon-Ra because he, I don't think he would have been like massive chalk or anything, but he would have been a big piece of the tight end landscape, I think.
Yep. All right, Hasan, we got CMC, Ceedee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're living in the NFC. We've posted up here with our humidifiers, our Werthers. Where are we going next?
Yeah, this is going to be, it's kind of what Pat just alluded to it, but it's going to have to be Travis Kelce. And you can tell people telling themselves like a story, and the story sucks. Like, it's just going to be like, whoa, Travis Kelce, like the Chiefs have been saving like all their trick plays. Oh, they're down, but not out. Like, you can tell them, like, you can see the mental gymnastics people will do to keep playing Travis Kelce, even though the Chiefs themselves have not looked like a strong offense, but at the same time, like, your other really viable tight end is probably Dallas Goedert. But like from a true, optimal projections perspective, I just see Travis Kelce on, like, I don't know what you've got him at, Pat, but like at 50% of the lineups.
I have him at 53%.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Yeah, I'm going to also do a round of projections. I'm going to do a round of projections. So I haven't. And just,
like
just so you guys know, shit. just off. But yeah, but it's just one of those things. Like, the LaPorta injury really is going to have people just flocking to Kelce, because like there's just no way people are going to go in not feeling like they don't want the FFPC 106 or 103 or whatever he was on their roster.
It's crazy too, because Blair, if obviously it's tight end premium. Even I am somewhat forgetting as I ask this question, but like straight up, would you rather have Rashee Rice? Like, if you threw out positional stuff of just like who scores more points through the Chiefs playoff run?
Yeah, I think I would, just based on mostly the recent play of both of these guys. But yeah, the tight end premium makes a bit of a difference. That's the only thing where, I do think Kelce is going to be the highest owned tight end, but I think there are some ways to play tight end position that are interesting enough that he might not be as popular, right? You have guys like Njoku, you have Isaiah Likely, even you have Goddard, right?
Yeah.
So this is a year, I think, where we might not get the Kelce, overwhelmingly above the field.
Yeah, that was my read, that he wouldn't be like that at first, but then I think a few things. One, we lost LaPorta, but two, we lost Evan Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another and then Dalton Schultz won't really get that much. So that's a big chunk of tight end ownership. And then I don't think people are feeling that good about playing Mahomes, especially with the Bills as the 2 seed. I think you're going to see quarterback ownership really consolidate to Lamar and Josh Allen. So in years past, we saw Mahomes, as a somewhat popular play. I think he'll be less popular than usual, just because you want to play the other quarterbacks as opposed to you're not thinking about the Chiefs first like you often did. So it all just kind of pushes people to Kelce as like I guess I'll play Kelce.
I think I'm closer to Blair. I do think he will still be the most popular Chief, but I think when you think through how down people are on the Chiefs, like as opposed to that Rams-Lions game where people are going to look at that total, see shootout, everyone here is going to see the frigid temperatures, Kansas City, it's like people can talk themselves into Pacheco, they can talk themselves into Rice, and they can also talk themselves into soft fading the Chiefs as well. Like, I think you could say I'll play the defense against this banged up team too. So I do wonder if it gets watered down in a way. Like right now, I might bet the under on 50% Kelce. I think I would.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of still with Pat. Although I did play a lot around with the idea of like having Pacheco here instead of Kelce, like you said, because of the weather. And I think the one big thing that'll push people off of Kelce and onto another tight end, probably Goddard, will be something that we're gonna have to all monitor. AJ Brown's injury situation.
That's a big thing.
Yeah. That's going to be the big one.
Where do you have ownership on David Njoku? Because he's the other guy who I'm probably looking at as the next candidate for most owned tight end.
What do I have in Njoku? Let's see. In Njoku, I have it 29%.
Yeah. I'm just thinking because, it's either hard fade Cleveland defense, or Njoku. Basically, those are your only options.
What about Amari?
I mean, Amari ripped these guys a few weeks ago.
Yeah, just like.
I mean, we're not even considering Amari, who was the Amari playoff best ball, or not?
Amari is the most boomer pick in this contest, so you're right about that.
I have Amari and Njoku dead even because I guess AJ Brown. If AJ Brown's healthy, maybe that pushes more people to Njoku. If he's not healthy, then people go Amari, and you can go more Goddard. So I think,
and I would say over
fair.
the years too, again, the boomers, ideally they want to lean in to the tight end premium, and they want that pick to come from a point of dominance, right? Where it was the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. All right, I got the 1.5. I got the guy headed to the Super Bowl. This is the first year it's kind of shaky, but that is the only reason I'm playing devil's advocate to my own argument of why I don't know if they'll funnel all the way into Njoku, because people will get so spooked about, I'm going to lose that 1.5 if they go one and done, or they head to Baltimore and get smoked. I think that psychology of the zero at tight end might loom large, even though that's not ultimately how the scoring of this contest works. But I do think the Kelce click will ultimately feel more comfy. I just think it's going to be maybe a little bit more spread out Chiefs wise.
I could see that. Yeah, I actually lowered Kelce to 48% based on your guys' feedback and bumped Pacheco up to 30%. But I don't think many people go to Rice. I think you're either going Pacheco and you're playing it Chiefs win in round one and they kind of go through him in bad weather, or you just get the tight end premium and get tight end taken care of. I think Rice will be pretty low owned.
Do you think many people go I know Mahomes hasn't played well, but he's the Tom Brady of our era. You just don't bet against him in the playoffs. I'm happy putting in Mahomes.
I have him and Hurts at 5% each, with that in mind of just there's going to be some people who are it's Mahomes. And then with Hurts, it's tush push and all the scoring he has. If they make a run, he's going to be optimal. So, I think there are some people like that. And it makes sense. If they make a run and it's more spread out, you have Mahomes CMC in the Super Bowl, you feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. Well, just talking that out, I'll probably be pounding the table for a little bit of Rashee Rice in our portfolio.
He does feel like a good pick to me. I think he's a good contrarian pivot. Because
it's almost like the inverse of chalk ARSB, where I can tell myself stories of unpopular Rashee Rice getting there in both game scripts. Chiefs win 2 games, Rashee could be optimal. They go one and done, but they get in a little back and forth with the Dolphins, and he's their top pass catcher. I can see that for sure. All right, Hasan, where do you want to take us next?
Wait, one thing before we go off of, I just want to shout out. There was a comment from Historical Anomalies, pro Kelce here, saying boomers are forced to listen to Taylor Swift by their daughters.
That's true. There was some good comments in here about how the boomers were gonna handle them. I think Phil, shout out producer Phil tonight, saying that the boomers, Nick first said boomers 100% think Kelce isn't focused. Because of Taylor. And then Phil said the boomers don't love Mr. Pfizer either.
That's also true. Yeah. So okay.
You guys make some good points. All right, Blair or Hasan, where are we going?
We're gonna probably stick a wide receiver in the flex, and this is also another easy pick. It'd probably be Tyreek Hill would be your one Miami pick, right? I think people are just gonna throw throw caution to the wind. This is like, even though there's supposed to be light gusts of wind or whatever, and it's supposed to be cold, I think people are just going to say, screw it. Like, you want Tyreek Hill. Like, I think Devin Achan's a phenomenal play in this contest, is given how weak running back is, and people aren't going to necessarily want to play him. But like, it's really hard to argue against Tyreek Hill, especially with Jalen Waddle's, like if Waddle plays, like I would expect that he's more decoy than not. And this could be like, if this game does shoot out, or as people are hoping it shoots out, like Tyreek Hill is another guy who's just going to bury you in the one game.
Yeah. This is another one I would say similar to the Ceedee Lamb separating from his teammates. Tyreek just separates in such a big way. You can look at the underdog ADPs. Tyreek Hill ADP of 7. It's not till Mostert at 25, Achane at 30, Waddle at 31. Just like a pretty big gap here. And people are spooked, myself included, about this version of the Dolphins team. But even through all of that spookage, like Tyreek Hill always feels good. It's just like, he's the focal point of their offense. There's like, unless he gets hurt, it's almost impossible to not see him, contributing a decent score to your squad.
And this is one where I don't think people want to really fade this game because of, they don't really want to have to fade like these teams, because you have such an obvious click in Tyreek, and then the Chiefs are playing at home. So this, everything you said, Pete, about wanting to have your tight end, I agree with. But if I don't have my tight end, but I have 2 games of Tyreek Hill, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that makes it tougher, though, to come off of Tyreek Hill for a Devin Achane for the field, because it's like, if I'm losing Kelce and then I have Devin Achane, I need Achane to outscore Tyreek Hill over 2 games, and now I don't have a tight end in a tight end premium format. I'd rather just pick Tyreek, and I'm good either way.
And I don't think people want to deal almost with like the Gibbs Montgomery thing. I feel like people don't want to deal with the Achane Mostert combo. Right. Even if they win a game, it's like, well, what if I play Achane and he doesn't rip off a big play and Mostert gets 2 goal line TDs? I'll feel like such an idiot.
Or he doesn't have a big game, then Mostert's healthy the following week, and
Yeah. Blair, you see people getting anywhere other than Tyreek Hill here?
No, not really. I really do like the Achane call. I think he's a really nice pick in this game, especially matching up against the Chiefs, who are not great at stopping, like missed tackles and yards after contact. So that's a nice play when he's going to be so unpopular. But yeah, I don't think most people will go anywhere but Tyreek Hill here.
Yep. All right. That one feels like a pretty easy fill-in spot here. What do you got next, Hasan?
Yeah, this is where decisions have to be made a little bit. And this is where I was bringing our chat just to get your take on this. But I think Stefon Diggs, unfortunately, makes his way here in for me. Buffalo Bills getting the 2 seed really buggered it up for everyone, and also Diggs actually putting in together a fairly solid game really messed it up a little bit. I was really toying around with the idea of James Cook, but I genuinely couldn't see myself as to how many people are going to actually click James Cook, which makes him, frankly, a very interesting pick in this tournament, just because you expect them to play at least 2 games. I was, playing around with the idea of Josh Allen at quarterback, but I just couldn't get there, unfortunately. And so that's where I think people are still going to want a Buffalo Bill, and they're not going to want a Gabe Davis. They're not going to want James Cook. They're not going to want Kincaid. They're not going to want anybody else, right? So it's either Josh Allen or Diggs, but in this lineup, like I could only get Diggs to work. And that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. Because Allen's the only other guy that I think people will gravitate to, but he is not going to be more popular than the quarterback that you put in there. It's interesting because Diggs has kind of been the wide receiver version of Travis Kelce this year, and that everyone still has fond memories. They still like the offense, but his form hasn't really been there. It's weird because his underlying usage has still been pretty good. Like looking at his, market share and stuff. And you even watch last game. I mean, holy cow, Josh Allen just barely missed him for what would have been a massive TD that would have caused his ownership to jump by about 15% here. So yeah, I do think ultimately Diggs will be in the Boomer Opto, but not in a way that maybe fully separates him from Josh Allen. Like that push-pull, I think will be pretty interesting this week.
Yeah, I think they both end up very chalky, but I agree with Hasan that it's difficult to go with Allen as the highest owned guy here, because it really is, well, then now I have to pick a non-Lamar Raven, and the upside of it is a little bit muted by all this weather stuff. Like they're going against the Steelers. The upside, right, is that they're basically getting this free extra game against the Steelers that everyone expects them to win. And so, you're getting the quarterback who gets to play 4 games, and it's a high-scoring quarterback like Josh Allen. That's super appealing. And in a lot of cases, different versions of the season, Allen would be like mega chalk with this setup. But because you're not as excited about his scoring in this game, and then like there's just not a Raven that's a fun click at all, I think people probably just play it through Diggs more often than not.
Yep. And if you do the 2v2 thing, right, like the only guy you would consider would be Zay. And if you're doing like a Zay Josh Allen versus Lamar Diggs, like the Boomers are going to side to the Lamar Diggs side there. And it is such a bummer that we don't have a healthy Mark Andrews, because then all of a sudden he becomes the pole position tight end, quarterback gets further spread out. That's a bummer we don't have that.
It's interesting because if Buffalo had lost that game to Miami, you could see some kind of fade of Buffalo being one of the most popular positions. But just because they have the number 2 seed, I think you can't fade them. I wonder how many people are going to play them through the kicker or defense anyway, just because they're not that interesting.
I have 97% of the fields playing a Bill.
Yeah.
Right.
Not counting kicker D.
The thing is like, it's the same thing with how people think through the CMC stuff. Like the field will naturally want to play the bye team as headed to the Super Bowl. Like that will be the default thinking. And if you're doing that, then you're going to want to play their best fantasy position. So I think it's certainly viable to like soft fade and do the Tucker stuff or do the Zay Flowers stuff. But the Boomers will be playing the Ravens to the Super Bowl in a very weak AFC, and they will want to capture all of that through Lamar Jackson.
I mean, even if you had a healthy J.K. Dobbins, I think you'd have less Lamar. But it's just like, man, it's really just Zay Flowers. And I mean, you'll see some Zay Flowers ownership, but it's not a super fun click.
No.
So
Isaiah likely not
a fun click. Can I do this while we're comboing this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is where like we had this discussion, but this is really where what makes this like the Boomer optimal versus like, a lineup that actually has a story to it, right? Like this is just how it's unfortunate, but this is how it's going to be, right? Like, and then people can talk to themselves into Lamar's got all the rushing usage, even if he only plays 2 games, he's going to put up like 3 games worth of production, right? Like you just get all the arguments, and like who else are you going to play? You like Gus Edwards is probably going to catch 2.5% ownership. Likely he's going to catch like 5% ownership. Like you're not actually going to be playing OBJ or Nelson Aguilar or any of those guys, right? So, I mean, the only other one is like again, Tucker could be one with Josh Allen at your quarterback position, and then you essentially play the lineup as a Baltimore will lose to Buffalo, who will play 4 games, right? But I just cannot see people playing that. Yeah,
because that'll be people who soft fade Baltimore and say, hey, Cleveland or Houston goes in there and upsets them. I'll play Tucker or Zay.
I mean, I do wonder how many people, Boomers in particular, are going to remember when the Ravens were in a very similar situation a couple years ago and lost to Tennessee and
the Titans. Yeah.
And kind of, Lamar can't win in the playoffs. You can't play him in this playoffs. It's probably not a very popular take, but maybe more than we expect.
I do think you'll see. I have 5% Justin Tucker, and so I have only 94% of the field playing a Raven. Not doing a soft fade on the Ravens. So I have a 6% combined soft fade, hard fade on the Ravens. That's only 3% for the Bills. It's only 2% for the Cowboys, 1% for the 49ers, 6% for the Dolphins, tied with the Ravens there. So they're not like, one of these 49ers types teams where I think like literally everyone plays a 49er. So I think you get a little bit of that fade element that you're talking about, Blair, but also because you can play it through Tucker.
Yeah.
You're like, this is actually the best pivot I've got. Is just betting on them to lose.
The sentiment too for the Ravens is like they have had some marquee wins in big primetime spots. Like that game against the Niners is firmly imprinted in people's memories. Then they just absolutely ragdolled the Dolphins. They had a really huge win over the Lions earlier this season. Like they're a team that I think people respect in a way that even if people still have some lingering doubts, like, is this a Super Bowl team? I think they're still going to want to play them as a team that wins 2 games. And what you also have going for the Lamar Jackson ownership, it's just like, who's scary outside of Josh Allen right now and the Bills at like really getting hot and making a run. And if you're going to make that bet, the Ravens bet for that feels way more comfy, than betting. It's like Josh Allen, like that could go disastrous, like very quickly. Whereas Lamar, it's like, I'm going to get 2 wins, right? Or I'm going to get them to the conference championship game. That's the psychology, I think, going through the Boomers right now.
Right. And the other teams that you can think of making a run, like on the NFC side, already have guys who you'd rather play than the quarterbacks, CMC and Ceedee. So you can't get to Purdy, you can't get to Dak. So, Jackson is just the obvious.
Yeah, it's a weird contest because you're like, man, Dak is a good pick. Like if you're betting on betting on the Cowboys to make the Super Bowl, take Dak. But then it's like, all right, but even if they make the Super Bowl, I'm showing up with Dak, Zay versus Lamar, CD teams.
Right.
Good God.
Yeah. And when you look at like even just the Super Bowl odds too, I mean, the Ravens and Niners are such overwhelming favorites. The Bills are the third, but they're like half the odds of the Ravens too. Like people are going to want to have the 2 highest scores in the Super Bowl, and that's going to be Lamar Jackson and CMC as people play that out in their heads.
We'll get to this a little bit more, but just a comment here from Nick says he feels like the fade number on Miami needs to come up. We talked the Tyreek Hill thing, but my thinking there was that basically Hill will be such a comfy click that people will play him like almost like I don't care if they win or not, because it's kind of like the Amon-Ra St. Brown one where it's like I don't have to worry about whether or not what happens in this game. I'm going to take Kelce, Hill, and I'll go pick my losing teams elsewhere.
And the other thing people have to realize too, it's not saying you can't fade or soft fade Miami. You absolutely can. But when you think about how the field is going to do this, they're going to look at the biggest underdogs. And you're basically saying, all right, if I'm not playing Tyreek there, I'm going to play Jaden Reed or George Pickens. I'm basically subbing in another guy because I'm, soft or full fading the Dolphins. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. I think it's viable. But the field is going to be playing Tyreek Hill over Jaden Reed, over George Pickens at a much, much higher clip.
Yep.
All right, Hasan, where do we go next?
Yeah, so we discussed him earlier, but and I just did a quick Google search. We don't have enough information on him, but as of right now, I'm just going to assume he's playing. So AJ Brown is probably going to be the play. The big caveat here with AJ Brown is I think that ownership will gravitate towards Dallas Goedert, not Devonta Smith, if only because I think people would prefer to play this through the tight end premium in the event that we're not feeling it. So I'm like, those are the 2 Eagles guys that I'm willing to sort of put here. I'm willing to say AJ Brown will be the higher owned. But in the event that AJ doesn't play or is like looking that he's like going to be limited, I think ownership will gravitate more towards Dallas Goedert again because I think people would much rather have that 1.5 point per reception. So this is like it's like a hedging take a little bit, and unfortunately, I hate being a gardener about this, but like we just don't know right now with AJ Brown, and we're not going to know because of how late this game is.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
That does make it really tricky.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. The thing I'll note, as we talk about the Miami hard fade, the Eagles hard fade is going to feel better than the Dolphins hard fade because AJ Brown's not going to be as fun of a click as he usually is. And Goddard, while I think will be the secondary Eagles chalk, I have him above Smith as well. I mean, he didn't have a great season. He was banged up this season. He's kind of a disappointing year. Like, you're not excited to play Dallas Goedert, like you'd rather play. I think you'd rather just go Kelce, Tyreek. Don't have to think about that game. And you know what? I'm going to fade the Eagles and take Rachaad White. Now I'm really
exactly.
I think too, this domino, we're not going to know until, the Friday and Saturday practice reports, right? Because that domino is going to determine all of this. Obviously, if AJ Brown was ruled out, it's going to funnel to Dallas Goedert. If it is like legitimately up in the air, whether he's going to play or not, people might just throw their hands up in the air and be like, I'm not dealing with this. Like, I'm going to either soft fade or full fade it. And then if he's in and it's like AJ Brown's good to go, got in the full practice, then I think we're back to him in the Boomer Opto. But like those three scenarios, I think are going to send us in three different directions based on, updated reports before lock.
Yep. I could see the Eagles maybe falling. Like if AJ Brown, if we just don't know, like it's like really, we just like, God, I just don't feel good clicking him, but I also don't want to click Goddard. I could maybe see it going to Elliott.
Yeah, Jake Elliott, yeah.
And people playing the Tampa Bay side of this in a bigger way.
Yeah, 100%, especially because Tampa Bay is the home team and there's two viable players there that you can really jam if you want. It's like especially because people don't like the running backs, right? And like the idea of getting or finding a good reason to play Rachaad White, just make people happy.
I honestly think, well, I guess we'll get into how thin running back is, but I also wonder if people might say, like, fill out the lineup and then be like, you know what? If AJB can't goes, I don't even like this spot. I'll just pivot it straight to Mike Evans, who gets to face, one of the worst secondaries in football at home. And I don't even have to really rechange my lineup.
Yeah. I agree with you. That's a great point.
So yeah, that one's very much up in the air. Where are we going here next, Hasan?
Yeah, so last but not least on the flex side, this is probably going to be Nico Collins, right? I think people are going to want to play this through the fact that Houston's got a pretty solid offense. It's a home game for them. You can actually throw on the Browns, right? And I think that's where Nico Collins comes in because people are going to be pretty excited to play a guy who you pencil him in for like 8+ targets, right? And the potential of a second game, and that's where I think this is a pretty tough pick because again, like you said, Amari just torched his team not too long ago. But like, what are the odds of him repeating it, especially considering that he's nursing an injury? He's still also got a contender with Njoku. I think people are going to play the defense as the Cleveland defense, right? Like, I think that's going to be their soft fade, and then Chase McLaughlin becomes that other soft fade there.
So I think I disagree.
Yeah,
just like as a reference point, like Njoku goes ahead of Nico in underdog drafts, and that famously is half point, not 1.5 tight end. So like, I think sentiment wise, and just with the fact that I think some people will roll out one tight end lineups with Njoku, I think you're going to see Njoku or a Brown at a higher clip. And they're also favorites too. And so I think people will much be either hard fade or soft fade the Texans here. So that would be my quibble with it.
I'm with Hasan here as far as kind of I have Nico as a chalkier piece than Njoku or Amari, because you have to pick one. I have the Texans at a higher overall fade level than the Browns. Okay. But of all of the players we're discussing, Amari, Njoku, Nico, I have Nico as the highest owned.
Yeah, it just comes down to like just the fact that you have to play a guy.
And again, the AJB stuff could again change things.
Yeah,
where people then go, all right, I'll play that game as the shootout. I'll play one of Njoku or Amari along with Nico.
That's kind of where I'm coming at it from too, is you might end up seeing more Jake Elliott teams and get Njoku and Nico on the same team. But I do agree with Hasan that I think the most popular play from Cleveland is going to be their defense.
Interesting. Man, I don't know.
That's how I have it too. But it's basically a three-way split. I have it as like a three-way split between their defense, Amari, and Njoku.
And this is where like it becomes interesting for where you're building your lineups, because this is where like it becomes a pick your own adventure type of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's the issue.
So
that there's no clean leverage here.
Right.
There really isn't. Yeah.
I guess I do kind of agree with you that like people, when they are, one of the beauties of this contest is people gravitate to what feels like the coziest thing. And you're looking at these defensive spots and it's like, you're not using the Cowboys defense versus the Packers. You're not using the Bills defense versus the Steelers. So then it's like, what's the defense I like? You know, who really pins their ears back and gets the quarterback? The Boomers are going to love the Browns there. So I do agree with you in that stance. I guess from my spot though, I'm like, this version of the Browns is like, this is a fun team. Like they're letting Flacco cook. Njoku could just rack up a monster game in 1.5. That's where I'm gravitating, but I see your guys' argument for Browns D there for sure. Should I fill that in, Hasan? I assume that's what you have.
Yeah, and then you get, and that's where you get Chase McLaughlin from. I think realistically, Boomers are going to definitely want to fade the Packers and the Steelers, right? Like the less said about the Steelers, the better. But like the Packers don't have any clean players that you just want to feel comfortable picking in, which really makes, from a game theory perspective, all Packers skill players very interesting to me. You know, Aaron Jones with his like 100-yard games, and you also got Jaden Reed who's been coming on, and then you can get Romeo Doubs, right? Like it becomes interesting. But I think this is where you're going to catch some ownership. And this is sort of how this lines into your last running back there this is how people back themselves into Kyren, right? Like this is like Kyren's been like the RB1 twice since coming back from injury. Like he just gets fed in the receiving game, even when they're trailing. Like there's just no way to not have Kyren Williams there.
Yeah. I agree. I think of, you know, we went down to like Diggs and this AJB and Nico. I mean, Pat, as far as like overall percentage, and I know there's Puka and Cooper Kupp, but I feel like Kyren's going to be a higher percentage than a lot of these guys we just discussed.
Oh yeah. I have him at 55%. So I have him hit more than Kelce. He's one of the chalkiest guys in a tournament, I think. It's just a comfy click. Running back's not it's really him and CMC that you feel good about, because even like Rachaad White, you're going, yeah, but do I even want to pick the Bucs? You know, and I think that's where the AJB stuff comes in. Because I think, let's say people just really don't feel good about the Eagles. It's funny because I did the Boomer Opto on my own, and this is exactly what I had. We didn't discuss before this. So I am in complete agreement, but I do think that the AJ Brown part of this creates an alternate Boomer Opto where you go Jake Elliott, Rachaad White, David Njoku, and the Texans D is probably the way people would play that. Or maybe, let's say Steelers D, Texans hard fade.
Yeah, I agree because
Yeah.
then you're just playing the Browns to win, and like it doesn't matter what the Texans do at all.
Right.
Yep.
And I think down in these bottom ones here, specifically, the kicker and defense, I think there's a lot of room for shuffling. And this is where the ownership projections are going to probably have the most volatility, specifically with the Eagles situation. People like Mike Evans, people like Jaden Reed. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jaden Reed come in maybe a little hotter than expected too, in scenarios that people want to play that game is the shootout. There's some attractive pieces here that I think are going to make a lot of this interesting.
If you play a Packer, then you're fading the Rams, the Dolphins, the Lions, or the Chiefs, I think, right? Or you're fading two sides of one game,
Right.
which some people will do. But I think the Packers are difficult. They're very difficult click. Like I think I have the total fades on the Packers at 91%.
Man, I'll tell you right now, I'll be pounding the table for some Jaden Reed in Cowboys soft fades.
Any interest in Aaron Jones and Cowboys soft fades? If only because
yeah,
I think he's viable. What I would say is if the one of the big edges in this tournament is picking a bracket, then the Packers become a really interesting pick because you're going, you know what? I'm going to pick a winner between the Chiefs and the Dolphins. I'm going to pick a winner between the Rams and the Lions. Having done that, I feel more comfortable fading. I know that the Chiefs are winning this game, so now I'm more comfortable fading Tyreek, or I know the Rams are actually going to lose this game, so I'm more comfortable fading Kyren, whatever it is. That then opens up the Packers, who I do think are pretty interesting. And I think they'll sorry, I said 91%. That's for the Steelers. I have 84% fading the Packers, which is still very high. 91% fading the Steelers. I just don't think basically anyone picks the Steelers. But if you've got, only 16% of the field rostering a Packer, then, any Packer you pick is going to be a nice little leverage play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how you play your Ceedee Lambs and your CMCs on the same team. Right?
Yep.
Yes. But like Pat was saying, you then have to pick a loser in one of those other games that people would prefer to play both sides. But it's like you said, it seems crazy. And this is where the ownership disparity between the likelihood of even Jaden Reed outscoring Tyreek Hill, where they both lose, much less the leverage scenarios where the Packers upset the Cowboys and the Dolphins lose. You could be pulling away from just such a large swath of the field with that single pivot.
I think Kyren becomes a really interesting fade because the Rams might lose this game. And the Lions are an attractive opposing team, but partly because they don't really have a great pass rush and you can pass all over them. That doesn't have that much to do with Kyren. So you could have Puka go off.
Yep.
And you don't have him.
And
but that doesn't hurt you so much because he's not the chalk, right? Or you could have Cup go up. Cup could be 10%. So he goes off and you're like, shit, I wish I had more Cup. But I got Jaden Reed, and Jaden Reed had a really nice game, and Kyren duds. And Kyren loses to Reed. You can still win and by the way, I think Cup is going to be a pretty sweet play as well.
I agree.
Yeah.
Both Cup and Puka, I think, are going to be very nice plays.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be fun because I want to say in previous years, when we've gone through it, I feel like some of the Boomer chalk felt even more obvious than this year. I mean, it gets dicey down there, partly because of Travis Kelce and Stefon Diggs, not having awesome years. They just, before those guys would come preloaded in this stuff.
Yep.
Blair, any other thoughts on how this shook out here from a Boomer perspective?
No, I agree with all of this. I do think, I think Kyren is the most likely Ram to pull in this kind of ownership. I think that people might see the matchup against Detroit and say, oh, this is a game where we need to play Puka or something. But there just aren't any other running backs you can play that you feel confident about. So,
yeah.
I mean, I like this as the Boomer Opto. I can see some of these not being necessarily the most chalky plays on their team, like with Njoku, with maybe Rachaad White or Mike Evans instead of McLaughlin. But
do you know where I could maybe see some 2v2s? And again, not saying this is the Boomer Opto, but maybe higher than expected. I think people could talk themselves into some James Cook and then talk themselves into some Puka, to where that 2v2 maybe isn't as big of a stretch as you would maybe think.
That was one that I was like contemplating as well, like a 2v2 on, because I really thought Puka was going to be the chalk, so I had that, and then I had James Cook. I thought a lot more about it, and I just realized people they just can't play James Cook that much, just because Josh Allen gets all those rushing touchdowns. James Cook doesn't get a lot of receiving work. Like, it becomes really challenging.
Yeah.
But like, I agree with you. I could see it. I can see that.
Are you sure that Cook has played more than Dalton Kincaid?
Yeah, that's the issue, right? Like,
well, how many entries is Liam putting into this contest? Help me answer that question.
Do you think Rachaad White comes in as an attractive running back option if you want to play Puka?
Yeah, I think that's been, and Nick in the chat's been pounding the table for Rachaad White, and I keep thinking about that one. That my initial read was that Rachaad White would be the chalk, and then I went to Evans as kind of the game script play if people wanted to play that more as a shootout. But if people are starting to feel worse about AJ Brown and they're just like, this game, let me just take the comfy player from this game and bet on the Bucs to win at home. I think he's probably not just the highest owned Buck, but potentially in the Boomer Opto.
Yeah.
Like maybe people go White and Jake Elliott, and that's how they handle that game.
Man, I get the positional scarcity thing with running back, but the market very much prefers Mike Evans to Rachaad White, like in a vacuum.
In the underdog stuff.
Yeah. And just in general, like when you see, like throughout the year, like even thinking into playing DFS this year, I mean, Rachaad White like always came in lower than you would expect for his workload. He's never been as sexy of a click as his workload would indicate, like he should have been, but for some reason he's just never gotten, like, even when James Cook had his stretch, people were like, holy shit, look at James Cook. Like no one was ever like, holy cow, I'm ready to go to battle with Rachaad White.
It's true. Well, now you just convinced me the other way. I'll keep flip-flopping.
I certainly see the running back scarcity position though, and how, like you said, with the AJB and stuff, but if it's just a flex spot, for sure, Mike Evans over Rachaad White. But if you are getting the Puka Cup stuff and then someone's trying to find that next RB, I could certainly see it there.
Yeah, I think that's probably because I only have 2.45 running backs right now. So that means I've got about a half a running back flex spot of 4 flexes. So there's not a ton that's a low. That means that people are playing an average of 5 wide receivers, 1.5 tight ends, and 2.5 running backs. That's a pretty wide receiver heavy build for FFPC.
But that's the way things have trended in the main event, like that. This has been a whole scale change where the Boomer Opto, this ain't your grandfather's Boomer Opto. This is a hip. These guys are out here playing pickleball. Boomer.
That's right.
Like, they kind of have their finger on the pulse, just not quite.
They're not yet ready to commit to Padel, but they love themselves to pickleball. Yeah. But that's sort of the thing, right? Is that like even some of the running backs that we really like to play, right? Like the Jahmyr Gibbs and the Devon Achans. It's very difficult to even play those guys given who else is on their team, right? Like if you're trying to go play Jahmyr Gibbs, like there's so much that's like holding you back just from a rational perspective of He's not going to outscore Amon-Ra St. Brown. Probably isn't going to necessarily get all the work because of Sam LaPorta. Then he also cedes the red zone work to David Montgomery, right? Like, there's just so much working against him. And even with HN, is like, do you really want to play this running back on the road in Kansas City, right? Especially as he's splitting time with Raheem Mostert, right? So it's so difficult, like, finding or locking in one of those, guys you could project for 20 touches. And, like, people don't like that, right? Like, they just get nervous. And it's fair. You get nervous. Like, if you're going to play one guy and he's only going to potentially play one game, you want him to get all those touches.
I wonder if just because of how thin running back is, we see a little bit more ownership on some like guys like Singletary or Jerome Ford, who you wouldn't necessarily even consider in this contest in most seasons.
That's interesting. And I do think it's one thing to think about with White is that, like, it is a little different from, like, because Chris Godwin's come on a little bit recently.
Yeah.
And so I don't think anyone really plays Chris Godwin. I'm at 3%. But it does make Evans feel less comfy as a click. And it's a similar dynamic to Puka versus Kupp. Which one do I take? Well, honestly, I should just take Kyren so I don't have to think about it. And you get the same thing with White. Well, White, I don't have to think about White. And, he opens up another, I can do this cool pivot elsewhere. He's one of the guys that unlocks those types of moves.
And the thing you think about too, right? It's similar to the ARSB stuff, the Debo conversation from before. The running backs who catch passes feel good in both game scripts, where people aren't going to be worried about, okay, the Lions are rolling. Well, guess what? Kyron's still on the field. He's still catching passes. They're still drawing up screens for him. The problem, I think, when you go to the Singletary Ford stuff, not that I don't agree with you, Blair, but just from a thought process, they're like, what if my guy gets in a negative game script? And all of a sudden, Jerome Ford's not even on the field anymore, or Devin Singletary's not even on the field anymore in those scenarios. It doesn't feel comfy. And so then you look around the landscape and it's like, which backs even catch passes? Okay, you're going to play 7.5 point road dog Aaron Jones as one of your two? Are you going to play Jahmyr Gibbs in a split backfield and not play Amon-Ra? Like, it's the running back spot is so thin this year from like a comfiness perspective.
Right.
Do you guys think Aaron Jones catches anything at all? Because that's one of the spots, like, maybe I need to raise him slightly, like, 4 or 5% and bring that fade down just a tad, because it is kind of an obvious spot where you're like, oh, I'll play this game as kind of a shootout, and he's good, and he's not a game script dependent back.
Right. I was actually thinking that, because you have that element of the running back being thin. You have not really anyone else on the Packers that's that interesting. You also have kind of the recency bias with Jones coming off 300-yard rushing games in a row, and also being a guy who can catch passes. So, yeah, I can definitely see a case for Aaron Jones catching some.
Yeah, I think it'll be very small. My candidate to surprise from a running back ownership perspective would be Pacheco, because I think Kelce feels so thin. People have been pretty stoked on Pacheco just when he's been playing. Workload's been good. I could see him being that guy. And people like that. They're playing that as a Chiefs win. It's cold. Yep. We're at home. We get the win. I'm going to roll with Pacheco there, who's been the engine of the offense.
To talk the larger market, though, Kelce is still going first in the underdog stuff.
Yes.
And the running backs there, that can be a difficult spot with the way that contest works. You often kind of need the running back. So,
but the spread isn't big, Pat. It's a 15 versus 20 ADP, even for Kelce and Pacheco right now.
It's not. You're right. It's not big, and Kelce's been falling. But with the tight end premium, like that format, I think boosts Pacheco, and this one boosts Kelce.
True. Yeah, that one will be interesting. I would say, like, just the pure strength of the Boomer Opto, even almost from like a points per projection. Like each year, if you would have like done it, used one of the, duration of the playoff rank projections, like I think this one would have to project worse than in so many previous years.
I think it just does, because the running backs are so weak.
And the tight end.
And the tight end. Yeah.
Because you would have gotten a monster projection on Kelce any of those previous years.
Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't even a question. Like the question was, how can you still play Kelce around all the rest of these guys, right? Like how can you not play Kelce? It was like the CMC thing. Like, how do you not play him, right?
Yep.
So I've been adjusting the Kelce ownership down as we've talked. But I've not been adjusting Rice up. I've actually lowered him slightly as well. JGFC asked where you think the Rashid ownership comes in. Where do you guys think he lands?
I'll probably have him in like the 5 to 8% range, right?
Ooh, wow.
I have him at 8%.
Yeah,
I think that's
man.
right, and I think it also makes him one of the best.
just
one of the tournament.
See, my initial thought was going to be more like 20%, but
no,
I think
man.
people go to
That could be-
Pacheco.
Pacheco.
I did wrong on that.
One of the kind of the lasting, and maybe we'll slowly change this over time, but we've been doing content around this contest for years, and it's, if anything, I feel like the chalk has been consolidating even more. People don't break ties evenly, or like 60-40s don't go 60-40, they go 80-20. People go 80-20 on 60-40s in this.
Like small field DFS ownership. The smaller the stakes,
Yeah.
the more the chalk.
It's
condenses.
it's just that Travis Kelce is just not a comfy click, and
I've got Pacheco up to 35.
Pacheco maybe.
During the pod. Yeah.
See, I can see those three, maybe not splitting it evenly, but I would guess a much closer spread between those three guys.
Between
Kelce, Pacheco, and Rice.
I see the thing is with Rice is like he only came on towards like the end of the season in like classic rookie wide receiver fashion. And I still think people are gonna like dock themselves into the Chiefs are gonna do what the Chiefs always do, and they're gonna unleash like Travis Kelce in the playoffs. They've been saved, like whatever bullshit narrative you can concoct in your head that's pro Kelce. If you were to say it out loud right now, like I guarantee it's going through someone's head as they're putting Kelce into their lineup. Like, oh no, they're gonna play a lot of this short field stuff. There's gonna why else would they not throw it to him during the regular season? They were saving him for the playoffs. You know, like they're gonna scheme him open, all sorts of bullshit, just whatever you can think of. It's gonna take whatever mental gymnastics it takes to get Kelce in there.
Yeah. That's why the Rice stuff is so fun, because you think about, if the Chiefs get down in a negative game script, okay, maybe Pacheco's not on the field as much, like that scenario where it's like, Rice could just out target, Travis Kelce or be the guy even in a negative game script where he's out there. Like they could have a game where he's the engine and then they go on the road to Buffalo in the divisional round and he's the guy in garbage time as the Bills are pulling ahead. Like, I don't know. Rice has so many outs to me game script wise relative to these other guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Rice Hill is pretty fun because you're betting, I think, more clearly on the Dolphins to win that game. And if they don't, you're still okay. You don't feel great with Rice versus Kelce over 2 games, but you're not dead. And then I think Pacheco pairs better if you're fading Hill. Don't you think?
Yeah, because
more betting on the win.
Yes.
Is the story that you're telling yourselves that like the Chiefs are just going to control the clock, control the ball, and Pacheco is going to get like a couple of TDs, and there's going to be less like scoring opportunity for the Finns there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're betting. I think you're betting like Hill didn't have a good game right against the Chiefs the first time, and you're betting that maybe they can limit him, and then he goes away. Because if you're fading Hill, I think you really do want them to lose. Like
that's what I was just going to bring that up, because I do think that's going to be a really stark dichotomy of I'm going to play Tyreek Hill or I'm going to full fade. I mean, Achan's ownership could be just
Achan's going to be
so mega low.
3%, man.
Do you think he'll be 3%?
I don't think he'll be 3%, but like it'll definitely be low.
I think he's Rashi Rice territory.
Okay.
5 to
I had
8.
him at 12, but that's probably a little
Yep.
spicy.
I mean, Mostert still goes ahead of him on underdog, which seems
that's
crazy
weird.
to me.
Isn't that so weird?
It's very
That's
weird.
crazy.
Like
That's
they might
that's
play
actually
one game and
legitimately
he might
crazy.
not play in it. Like, why does he go ahead? I don't get it.
It's a good question.
Recip asked a good question. Yeah.
About the possibility of 2 tight end teams. My sense is that in past seasons, we've seen a lot of those, and 2 tight end builds have been pretty popular. I wonder, do we have any numbers on like past seasons on that? And do we have a sense of
that up.
how popular that's going to be this year?
So
This
in
year, I mean,
2022, there was an average of 1.4 tight ends.
Wow.
So that was pretty low. I had projected.
Yeah.
And that was a better
1.5.
tight end year. Yeah.
Yep. So that was a surprise to me. I over projected tight end by a bit last year, although not by a ton. And I have it pretty similar this year at 1.5, but maybe I'm over projecting again. The actual projections 2 years ago was 1.8 tight ends, and I had it at 1.85. And then let's see if we get 2020. Do I have that? Yeah, 2020. I had projected 1.5 that year, and it came in 1.25. So that was
also
low.
with a smaller lineup, right?
That's true. That was before the playoffs expanded. So, and I guess it was 2021 as well. Yeah, so that's true. There were 2 less flexes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
I think I have one more
has
for you here. No, I don't have the 2019 loaded in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that tight end is even weaker than running back this year, and we just talked about how fucking weak running back is.
Yeah, it's just like just taking the Boomer optimal, right? And if you were to pivot AJ Brown into Dallas Goedert, and you were to flip out Nico Collins into David Njoku, you can see people going all in there, right? Like, but it's really difficult to see a lineup that won't have a Kelce in it. If you know what I mean?
Well, how much do you guys think people actually play? Let's say AJ Brown is expected to be like basically fine. How much do you think people actually play Goddard over AJ Brown?
Oh, then it's just going to be AJ Brown, dude. Like, I think you'd have him at like 55%, right? Because like the one guy who we really haven't talked about is the starting running back for the Philadelphia Eagles and DeAndre Swift, right?
Yeah, but everybody hates
like
him.
Nobody
I have him at 3%.
Yeah, exactly, and like that feels fair. Like, I think you'd rather play Hurts over Swift. Like, it's such a bad running back pool that it's so difficult to actually, like, just clicking that name just is like, what are you doing? Like it's like clicking Tony Pollard. You know what I mean?
Last year, I projected Miles Sanders at 5%, coming off of the year that he had that was significantly better than DeAndre Swift's, I would say. It was better. He came in at 3.
Yeah,
so I could be hot on DeAndre Swift at 3. He might come in at 1 or 2.
Yeah. I think when you factor in so many things with their form, I mean, Devonta Smith hasn't been 100% either. Like, Goddard will be the de facto if there's true uncertainty with AJB. Or people just go to the kickers. They go to the kicker, or they just fade it.
Yeah. That's going to be the one I tinker with the most over the course of the week, I think, is how people play the Eagles. Because how they play the Eagles then has it factors into how they play the Bucs. It factors into, to some extent, how they play the Browns, because Njoku and Goddard have some connection in terms of their ownership. It'll factor a little bit in how people play the Chiefs because of the Goddard Kelce stuff. So the AJ Brown news, I think, is by far the biggest one that you keep an eye on for this contest.
Yeah, it's very big. I think that'll shake up that bottom end of the Boomer Opto in a big way. Pat, when are you planning on dropping the first batch of ownership? Is that going to go live concurrent with the show tomorrow? Or are you going to get that out in the Discords earlier?
Yeah, I was thinking live concurrent with the show makes the most sense, right? So I might blast it out on the newsletter and throw it in the Discord, like at 8 tomorrow, 8 Eastern tomorrow, and then everyone can have their copy as we review it for the show. That probably works best, right?
Yeah. It would be fun, Pat, if you had, because like I know in our version of the sheet, you allow us to kind of go in. It'd be cool if you could figure something out, even with like a Google form or whatever, to allow people who actually, because a lot of people, and I do this too, where I like quibble with one part of it, but you also have to understand that anytime you're taking ownership away from someone, has to go somewhere else, which is going to boost someone. It's like, it really forces you to think through all of it in a logical way. But it sounds like there might be some people who would even be willing to take a stab at it. Maybe it would be an interesting data point for you if you had something like that.
Paul saying, please give us enough time to print them out. I mean, what conditions your printer in? You know, do you need to change the toner? You know,
yeah.
How much time do you need? No, I think that's
Boomer printers are old.
That's definitely interesting.
Or maybe you could just share like your template for like when you put something in. I don't know. I think it'd be fun to get some other crowdsource, and then you could have like a weighted column for like crowdsourced ownership or whatever.
Yeah, there's I'll talk to Phil Manor, who's a spreadsheet wizard, see if he can maybe come up with something. Because I know in the Leg Up Discord they've been doing they had like a group dynasty ranking. So
nice.
I'll ask him if he can set up a spreadsheet for that. Because that's definitely an interesting idea.
And just helping people put their money where their mouth is too. It's where it's like, man, if you're saying this is going to happen, like there are trickle down effects to the entire player pool that can have pretty big ramifications. So, as we mentioned, tomorrow, same time.
Yeah, I'll share it. Sorry, people might be curious. So this is what the way I do it looks like.
Let me pull this up.
So let's see. So I have all the stuff down here, and then these are all red because as I've gone on the show, they're all out of sorts. But I have the total fades right now. I need to just like take from D and add to D and take from kicker on these various teams. But I have it set up so that you see Sacrilegious has done his too. That's what this is here. So this is where the total fades are, and so maybe I can set up like a similar thing if people want to take a crack at it themselves. But the big thing is that these numbers make sense and kind of fit with what we've seen in past years. Like for example, last year, like just no one faded the Chargers. So that's what I'm talking about. Where like people are just like, I'm not thinking about this. I'm just gonna click Austin Eckler, and I don't care what happens because I have Austin Eckler. And that's good if they win or if they lose. And I think we're going to see that with the Rams. That's like my thinking this year with the Rams of not a team that has a great chance to go to the Super Bowl and is a road dog, right? But they're going to be a team people still play a lot of anyway.
Yep. So if you're in the Discord or Legendary Upside subscriber, Pat will get those out tomorrow before the show. Gretch will be back in the saddle. He's traveling back from the national championship game, but he will be with us tomorrow. We'll do kind of a full sweep through Pat's ownership projections, kind of fiddling with those. Again, appreciate all of your guys' input in the chat as we fine tune this for the challenge. Blair, Hasan, I know you guys have a couple podcasts up on the feed. You did one with Sacrilegious the other day. You guys did one the other day as well. Anything else people should be keeping an eye out for? Maybe any other written content too, Blair?
Yeah, I'm hoping to have an article about this contest coming out in the next few days. So definitely be on the lookout for that over at RotoViz.
Awesome.
Should we build a lineup here to close out?
I feel we did that last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
We built one for each show. I forgot about that. Good call.
Blair and I have another lineup that we can run by you guys later, but like you said, it's probably going to need some tweaking.
Yes.
I think it was a Buffalo soft fade, which
Yeah, it was about
it might still work.
All right. I'm getting us registered right now, but as we do, why don't we start talking about it here? Hasan, you want to start us off with a pick?
Do we want to? So the question is, yeah, I don't mind starting us off with a pick, and I was just curious. Do you guys have a strong preference between Gibbs or HN?
Why not both?
Because I think those are like.
No, I don't. I don't think I do really. I think they're both really good plays.
You say one, and I'll say the other.
All right, I'll go with Devon HN.
Okay.
It sounds like we're playing them both.
I was gonna say Gibbs no matter what.
All right, Gibbs no matter what.
We knew that was. All right, almost got us regged here. So we have Gibbs and HN.
Yeah.
HN, yeah.
Okay. All right, Pat, to you. Oops.
Well, I'm gonna just put in CMC before this goes all contrarian all the time.
No, but this is fine, right? But this is fine because it's
totally fine. Yeah,
this is a great lineup.
I'll chalk it up with some Lamb.
Yeah. See, this is where it gets actually difficult. Blair, do you want to go first? Then give me the second. The next.
You know, they're gonna do the crazy stuff. What's to take chalk?
Well, I mean, if you've got McCaffrey and Lamb already, you know, kind of depends on the quarterback. But I think I like Puka.
Yeah.
Does that make sense in this lineup?
Play it opposite of.
I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pick Rashid Rice as well, just because I kind of like the two lower owned picks from that game.
Who did you say?
Rice.
Rice and Puka, right?
Yeah.
All right. I think it's back to you, Pat.
I'll go Njoku.
That's actually the other one I was thinking. That's a really good pick as well.
Let's see, we got David Njoku. This one is already pretty. I guess it's basically Allen or Lamar. Let's roll Lamar here.
Yeah, and then. So the question is, do we want to soft fade the Eagles right now and then put in Jake Elliott? Like that was something that we'd want to do, or
I'm comfortable soft fading the Eagles if you want.
Yeah.
All right. The only problem is this leaves us in a position where we kind of either have to almost soft fade Buffalo or take Diggs, which doesn't seem great, or take a stand on someone like a Kincaid. Which I'm okay with, but it is already fairly contrarian.
It's a very contrarian lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we can take Diggs. I mean, he doesn't feel great, but like, what are you supposed to do?
Right. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. Oh boy. Give me Pittsburgh defense.
What?
Seriously?
All
right.
No, actually, hold on. Let me think, because we might end up. I mean, you don't want to fade Buffalo at all, right?
No, but I mean, we would. But Pittsburgh defense sets us up to take a bill.
I know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So what's the difference between Pittsburgh and one of the other soft fades?
I think they're a good pick. I mean, I think they'll
be
pretty chalky, but not in a way you need to like necessarily avoid.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no JJ Watt though. No. The other one, TJ Watt.
Yeah. He's out. Well.
Oh, that's true. Maybe that's
good.
a bad.
Yeah, that's kind of like
chalk then.
Yeah.
Although I wonder. Yes. Oh, if no TJ Watt, then they'll be lower owned. But also, if TJ Watt were playing, would you think they would be more likely to upset the Bills?
God, it'd be so funny if they lost to the Steelers.
if they do, you'd want to have like a Jalen Warren lineup.
We need to
right?
take Warren or
Jalen Warren,
Deontay Johnson.
We're all the money, baby. No, I don't think.
Take the one team with Jalen Warren. 2 Jalen Warren games.
You're so contrarian to add Jalen Warren on this lineup would be so funny.
4 running backs.
When it looked like Miami was going to win that game against Buffalo at like halftime, I was trying to kind of talk Hasan into a Jalen Warren Chiefs fade team.
I mean, this team's already off the rails, so we can stick the landing however we want.
It's very unique in a.
I'll go Diggs, and then you can pick our buck. I guess we have to basically take a buck.
Pick a buck, yeah.
Could take a Packer, right? Or
we could take.
We have Jake Elliott, so we need a buck.
Oh. Yeah, because one of our players is Diggs, right?
Yeah, our players are Diggs. I don't think we need Kincaid here, so I think we should. I'm going to pick Diggs, and then Pete can decide on our buck.
Yeah, let's just do Evans.
Yeah, it's like an easy click. Do we want Pittsburgh as a defense, or is there like a better D?
I mean, I guess Houston is a better defense playing at home, but do we?
Nah, I think I'd rather.
I think Pitt's fine.
Yeah,
I think Pitt's fine.
Play the Josh Allen meltdown.
I don't think it really
turnover.
matters because you don't actually want your defense to play that well.
I think you basically want to randomize the D, and I do think Pittsburgh will be pretty high owned because they have the reputation. So I would say we should probably take Houston or what's our other option?
Houston or Green Bay.
Or Green Bay, yeah.
Yeah, I think Houston or Green Bay are probably better picks just because of the ownership. I have Steelers D is like pretty high owned. Let me see. I have them as 25%.
Really?
Yeah. It's just because I think I have Pittsburgh fade is 63%.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of people just not playing them at all.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
All right, dudes. We did it.
This is a pretty exciting one.
First night of FFPC Playoff Challenge Week. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the RotoViz channel so you get all of Blair and Hasan's podcasts, all the written stuff. I forget, did you mention any written stuff coming, Blair?
Yeah, I will have one article up about this very contest. I don't know exactly the angle yet.
Oh, I know the angle, and it involves a Getty Images photo of Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, we'll see.
Hasan, any final words, any country/continents that you would like to fire a shot at?
No, still Australia, but 6 years in a row. But no, but I mean, check out our podcast that we did on Sunday. It's dated a little bit, but we talked to some of the decisions here in detail. Check out all the work on the Discord ship chasing and on Legendary Upside and Blair on RotoViz.
Awesome. Pat, anything else from you?
I would say I don't know, maybe I shouldn't tease it yet, but we're trying to get something together that'll be an additional helpful piece for this tournament. We'll see if we're able to get it out in time. But because basically we're trying to work on like a little interactive bracket because I couldn't find one.
I found that one site that we used to use and it was like Busto. They hadn't updated it.
They hadn't updated
that
it since last
Playtronics
year.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, the Playtronics one wasn't updating it. So I'm trying to figure out if I can do that as just like a quick little helpful tool. Because I think one of the big things with this tournament is you want to fill out a bracket. We didn't actually do this, but the lineup that we just built did follow an idea of we're sort of betting on certain teams to win, to some extent. So at the very least, you don't want to fade both sides of the game. But I also think it's just helpful to be like, I'm betting on the Chiefs to win, and therefore these players make more or less sense in that lineup. So
For sure.
that'll be hopefully we can get that little tool out. But either way, we've got the underdog playoff best ball tool. And the ownership projections will be coming out tomorrow.
Awesome. Love this week. Love getting to do all these shows. Like I mentioned before, we'll be here every night this week at 8:15. Tomorrow night, Gretsch ownership show. Thursday, stat chasing crossover, hodgepodge, NFC, FFPC underdog show. And then Friday, the capper with Dink and Leone. You guys can become YouTube members if you want to come talk in the Discord and continue this conversation, as well as get access to those ownership projections tomorrow. So for Blair, for Hasan, for Pat, for all the boomers down at the Sizzler, we'll see you guys tomorrow night.